Today, I want to talk about a line of cartridges that most people don't know actually began with John Browning. We're going to take a brief look at the cartridges developed for Browning's autoloading rifle, the Great Model 8. These include the 35, 32, 30, and 25 Remington. Love them, hate them, or don't know they exist, they had just as much of an impact as Browning's rifle, although both have largely been ignored by history. And remember, if you think I'm wrong, fight me in the comments. If you can prove I'm wrong, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. It is worth noting that Browning's autoloading rifle was not the first nor the most powerful. However, it was, arguably, the first commercially viable design. While every other inventor was attempting variations of modifying bolt-action service rifles to function automatically, the biggest obstacle was often the cartridges being used. By its nature, the market for these designs was entirely military. Browning, on the other hand, came at the problem from a sportsman's perspective. It was a luxury he could afford thanks to his independence from manufacturers that produced his designs. It was also a product of his method of working on automatics. More often than not, Browning would create a design and then optimize a cartridge for it. What Browning created was, relative to its time, a light and compact autoloading carbine. While this is generally reduced to a footnote in automatic rifle history due to the long recoil action, it had a tremendous influence on future automatic rifle and cartridge design. It also illustrates something of a dichotomy seen in many of Browning's designs. It's difficult to argue that the concept was ahead of its time, but it was the direction of the future and set a baseline for further development. And while it was grounded in the material and technology of its era, it was robust enough to adapt to emerging advances, which made it viable for half a century, while many other designs saw production closer to only a single decade, if they made it to production at all. To be clear, the records for early Browning automatic cartridges are nearly non-existent. We only have documentation to confirm that Browning was directly involved in creating the 35 and 30 Remington cartridges. While it is unlikely he was not also involved in decisions designing the 32 and 25 cartridges, it would appear the bulk of that work was done by William Thomas, the head of the Union Metallic Cartridge Company's ballistic laboratory. Thomas is, in fact, the unsung hero behind many of America's most well-known cartridges between 1870 and 1920. Much of what we don't know about Browning's automatic cartridge development can be attributed to his working habits, absent of notes or drawings, Winchester's notorious secrecy around products in development, and that most records for commercial products are discarded, especially when a company changes ownership. There do not appear to be any surviving records detailing which cartridge, or even caliber, was originally used in Browning's rifle. However, there is documentation around this time that Browning often created his own cartridges by modifying existing cases and working up his own loads before sending the prototypes to Winchester's ammunition department for production samples to be made. There is some circumstantial evidence to indicate that Browning may have contributed to, borrowed from, or was influenced by a Winchester program modifying 4570 cases to create a medium-caliber smokeless powder cartridge to work in the Model 1886. That decade-long sister program to Winchester's small-bore project, developing their own 3040 Krag cartridge, would result in the 33 Winchester centerfire, which was released in 1902. There is enough coincidence to speculate that Browning's autoloading rifle was originally conceived to replace the Model 1886 as a sporting rifle in the same way the 1886 replaced the outdated Model 1876. In that line of thought, using similarly sized cartridges makes a lot of sense. However, this is pure speculation. The truth is, we'll likely never know the full set of circumstances that brought the rifle into being. Browning's work on his autoloading rifle began around 1898 while in association with Winchester, with working prototypes submitted for patent in 1900. Development continued with Winchester until the infamous split in 1902, although Winchester never purchased any of the prototype designs, and the majority of work appears to have been done at Browning's private workshop in Ogden, Utah. The earliest surviving record of cartridge development comes from a 1903 Winchester drawing for a proposed .35 caliber. It seems that despite personal animosities, continued relations with the Browning brothers was just good business for Winchester, at least so long as Browning and Bennett didn't have to speak to one another. The proposed cartridge is not exactly the same as what would later be commercially produced, but does provide some insight into its early development. The Winchester Browning cartridge uses the 30 U.S. Army, Winchester's version of .30-40 Krag, as its parent case. It is modified to be rimless with a rim diameter of .490 inches, cut for an extractor groove, and shortened to the same length as .33 Winchester at 2.110 inches. Placement of the shoulder was taken from .33 Winchester specifications, resulting in a nearly 30-degree shoulder angle. The bullet is borrowed from the .35 Winchester, then in development, with a 235 grain, .358-inch round nose jacketed soft point. Overall cartridge length is also that of the .33 Winchester at 2.795 inches. During 1902 and 1903, rifle development continued at Ogden, as well as in Belgium with FN. By 1904, rifle development had moved again to Remington, with UMC taking over cartridge production. By September 1904, UMC was producing samples using 200 grain bullets. Initial cartridge dimensions were the same as the Winchester Browning prototype, using UMC's version of the .30-40 Krag, called .30 Government, as the parent case. Changes were made quickly, with a new shoulder angle of approximately 23 degrees and slightly shorter case length of 2.04 inches to match the length of UMC's .30-30 cartridges, as well as reducing the rim diameter to that of the cartridge base at .460 inches. The Remington Autoloading Rifle and .35 Remington cartridge were released under a special catalog in 1906. Advertised velocity for the 200 grain round nose jacketed soft point bullet was 2,000 feet per second, loaded with Laughlin and Rand lightning powder. FN would not release the rifle until 1911, titled the Browning Automatic Rifle .35 caliber, and later named the Model 1900. The cartridge was known in Europe as 9mm Browning Automatic, also firing a 200 grain bullet just over 2,000 feet per second. This would be the only cartridge chambered in the FN-produced rifle. Ballistically, Browning's .35 automatic cartridge was just under that of the military standard .30-40 Krag. This would have been a notable feat in 1900, but by the time the rifle was released in 1906, the Army had already developed a more powerful cartridge to compete with the 7mm Mauser. It was in the midst of adopting the Spitzer bullet. As many militaries of the time were painfully aware, turn-of-the-century powder and bullet technology was advancing faster than manufacturers could bring designs to production. While this would be one factor generally excluding it from military attention, it proved to be an excellent cartridge for medium and large game within 250 yards. By 1913, velocity of the .35 Remington had increased to 2,210 feet per second. Varying bullet shapes and weights were commonly available, but the 200 grain, round nose, jacketed soft point has remained the standard. Flat point bullets would not be popular until the 1950s, when it was chambered in Marlin's .336. In fact, the Marlin lever action, now made by Ruger, is one of the only rifles currently produced in .35 Remington, and is likely the largest contributor to the cartridge's continued use over the last 50 years. While it is an excellent cartridge for the lower pressure designs it was made for, outside of the lever action, the .35 Remington has largely been overshadowed by the higher pressure .358 Winchester, which uses the more readily available .308 Winchester as its parent case. The next cartridge released in the autoloading rifle was the .30-30 Remington. It began with UMC in 1904 as the .30-30 Smokeless Headless, simply being a rimless version of UMC's .30-30 Marlin. It is unclear why development was delayed, but the cartridge would not begin production until mid-1906, known internally as .30-30 Autoloading Headless, before being sold as .30-30 Remington in 1907. Due to confusion from the nomenclature, the name was changed to .30 Remington around 1910. Bullet weights varied from 110 to 180 grain, but the factory standard was the 170 grain round nose, available fully jacketed or soft point, at a velocity of 2,020 feet per second. Despite the immense popularity of .30-30 Marlin and Winchester, the .30 Remington was never particularly popular and accounted for only a small number of the Remington rifles which chambered it. Thanks to Remington's various pump-action rifles, however, the cartridge held on into the 1990s before being discontinued. Apart from benefiting from advanced bullet construction, no significant developments were made during the life of the cartridge. Ammunition can still be intermittently found through small batch manufacturers like Buffalo Arms and Reed's. The .32 Remington Special was also released in 1907, though it had a much shorter development. Production began in 1906 under the title .32 Autoloading Headless. Just as its Winchester counterpart used the same case as the .30 Winchester, the .32 Remington Special shared a parent case with the .30-30 Remington. The special nomenclature, being redundant and confused with the Winchester cartridge, was also dropped during 1910 and known simply as the .32 Remington. Initially released with a round nose 165 grain bullet, the standard load was increased to 170 grains in 1912 with a velocity of 2,220 feet per second. Its marginal popularity was slightly less than the .30 Remington, even among their own pump-action rifles. The cartridge appears to have been discontinued during the 1940s, not even outliving the autoloading rifle itself. Current availability of loaded ammunition is almost non-existent, though it may occasionally be offered by the same specialty shops producing .30 Remington. The last cartridge introduced in the Model 8 rifle was the .25-35 Remington. This cartridge began development in 1906 as the .25-35 Autoloading Headless, again, simply being a rimless version of its Winchester counterpart as produced by UMC. The .25-35 Winchester, however, had a heavily tapered case and low shoulder, which was found unsuitable during development. The case was changed in 1907 to use the same shoulder location as the .30 and .32 cartridges, simplifying production as well as improving feeding and increasing case capacity. Like the .30 and .32, the name was shortened to .25 Remington in 1910. The standard factory load was a 117 grain bullet using a slightly harder bullet jacket alloy with a velocity of 2,300 feet per second. It was advertised as the most accurate cartridge available in the autoloading rifle, producing a 3.5-inch 10-shot group at 100 yards. The .25 Remington would never be a popular cartridge. It accounted for less than 3% of Model 8 production and was only chambered in a handful of other rifles, generally only because it was an easy option to offer due to its nearly identical case dimensions to the .30 and .32 Remington. It is unclear when the cartridge was discontinued, likely during the 1940s. Officially, the cartridge was dropped as a chamber option from catalogs during the late 1930s, when Remington stopped production of the Model 8 and introduced the Model 81. However, .25 Remington was available upon request throughout Model 81 production. Ammunition availability, like the .30 and .32, is limited to boutique producers, though at the time of writing it can be found. So, to conclude, while the Browning Autoloading Rifle and its cartridges are today considered only a marginal success or an evolutionary dead end, they nonetheless had a great influence on later automatics and cartridges. The rifle set the standard, proving the concept and commercial viability of an automatic carbine, and the cartridges set the baseline for what would come to be known as the short action. That concept wouldn't mature until manufacturing, metallurgy, and powder technology caught up to one another in the 1920s. Browning's autoloading rifle, the Remington Model 81 Woodsmaster, was there to see it, providing a platform for the immensely popular .300 Savage. It is a testament to Browning's foresight and inventive genius that the Remington Autoloading Rifle remained in production for 50 years, until ideology and material technology caught up to produce the modern short-action semi-automatic rifle.